Um, for about the last 5 years, I started, to be absolutely honest with you, started getting a bit jaded with astrology, and was thinking, why have I not gotten enlightened from this? And it came about that I started to see things differently. Let me just start my PowerPoint. Um, so as you can see here, I've called this my book, The Divine Order. Um, so I'm going to show you today my thoughts with regards to a change of perception in astrology. The change of perception that I'm going to show you is incredibly simple to do. And I'll explain it how it's in the chart. And I will show you how by this change of perception, we unify traditional astrology with modern psychological astrology. So this is quite an exciting little journey because it's very simple to do, and it will help you see the world differently in a actually more enlightened way. Because enlightenment isn't something that takes years and years and years to attain. It's actually instantaneous, and it contains, if you think about it, the word light. To enlightenment actually has the word light inside it. And we're already in the light right now, aren't we? We're in the sun's light right now. So enlightenment is in fact something very easy to attain. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. And I'm going to show it to you in context of the chart. And I'm also going to show it to you in context of historically. So a few of the topics I'm going to cover, as you can see in this slide here, is number one, I have a thing called the all-seeing eye experiment, which is the actual shift of perception, and in which we will, I believe, see how the ancients saw. So we can go right back to Mesopotamia, Sumeria, ancient Egypt, and you can see how I believe the ancients saw the world. And that was actually enlightened because they had a divine connection to creation. And that's what I'm going to show you today. That divine connection to creation is actually in each of our own charts. Everybody's got it. And so it's a rather special moment, I hope, that you're going to find today, because this is astrology for the 21st century with Pluto going into Aquarius. So I'm actually going to show you a technique that's basically the opening of the third eye. And it's simple. So in doing so, I'm going to show you to define the difference between primary motion and secondary motion. Now, these are two motions of the chart, of the astrology chart. I will explain these to you in most simple terms. To be absolutely honest with you, most people have overlooked this. In fact, I would even say, having done astrology now for 35 years almost, and no one ever, in all the astrologers, no one ever said anything about the difference between primary motion and secondary motion and the key to enlightenment, which I have discovered. And I've put it in my book, and I'm doing books 2 and 3 soon. And so I'm coming in with very revolutionary and groundbreaking theories. Very simple to do, but once you see it in your chart, then you'll see it in yourself. And once you see it in yourself, your life will become very joyous and happy. So there's a choice with when you discover primary motion and secondary motion in your own life and in your chart. The choice will be within two states at will. So you can be first person awareness or third person consciousness, because as I'll explain later, I'll just get onto that as I'm just giving you the topics at the moment, as you can see here. So we are going to rediscover what the ascendant is and all the other 3 angles. So the ascendant, descendant, MC, and IC actually have a new meaning, or not a new meaning, but a new something that I'm going to explain. The rising sign, we call it the rising sign. Well, in Buddhism, they have a thing called thoughts arising, which is the state of meditation. And I believe, I'll explain this as well as we get to it as well. I'll explain this bit now, actually. I've had solar fire for more than 20, 25 years on my laptop. And I've often had the animated chart going on the laptop all the time, in fact, so the chart would turn as the day turns, it's a feature on astrology software where the chart's just moving as the clock moves. Quite a nice little thing to have. And I used to notice how, because I've done a fair amount of mindfulness meditation. I'm a bit of a slack Buddhist, really, but you know, because I can't say I'm particularly disciplined, but I have done quite a fair enough amount of mindfulness and some Buddhist practice, enough to be able to realize and connect all this together. So when you meditate in Buddhism, you're watching the breath going into the nose, the passage of the breath, and you find a point of sensation with the breath movement, and going through the nose, going into the nose. That's what you focus on, and then you notice thoughts arising. Okay, so that's what they call it in Buddhism, because the mind, our consciousness, is like a raging river. There's so much going through it all the time. You know, there's this constant flow of mind, of movement, of many thoughts popping up from all over the place. And where do they come from? You know, what is this? What's going on? So busy, you know, a busy mind. And it's called thoughts arising in Buddhism. So you observe those thoughts and then you learn to accept them and let them go. And that's the technique of meditation. Something else in there, though, as from my astrological perspective, was seeing that when the chart's turning in an animated chart, and the chart's turning, so as the eastern horizon is rising and planets are popping up over the four angles, and different things are lining up to make the moon's making different aspects, so my thoughts would be aligned to the thoughts arising. And so that I noticed that things popping up over angles would literally change the subject matter of my mind, as would planetary hours. So basically I started to really not technically map out, but to have a much greater awareness of how that was working. And I was like, to me, it felt like I was starting to solve the difference and why my mind works in the way it does. So I've connected it all together, which has resulted in me writing my book, and I'm pronouncing my new theory, announcing what I found. So we're rediscovering the ascendant and the rising sign. The rising sign is thoughts arising, rising. But also we can say that the rising into our divine nature is very important as well. And therefore, as I'll explain later, this is actually the origins of Christ consciousness. So, but as I'll explain it all as we get into the talk. So I'm going to be also explaining tonight the real meaning of a transit, and we'll get to that later. That's quite exciting as well. When the understanding of the primum mobile, or the unmoved mover, is awoken. Now that involves me explaining a bit about Dante's Divine Comedy, but also an understanding of Shakespeare. And so it all ties together rather beautifully. And so I'm giving you a very sort of artistic, creative approach today. And topic 5 is the fact that we are right on the cusp of Pluto going into Aquarius, which really is the Great Awakening. Now, I do a fair amount of psychic fairs and holistic-y kind of psychic fairs and events in where I'm based, which is Sussex. And I go to these events, and everyone's talking about things like, we're going 4D and we're going 5D. And I think to myself, well, you know, I get what they're saying, you know, they're all inspired and they're all getting their great awakenings, you know. But as astrologers, how can we use the idea of 4D and 5D? For us, it's about actually linking to our divine creative, our true nature. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, because in Buddhism and in other religions like Hinduism and Islam and various things, we have the true nature is something that is taught, or, you know, that one can discover. I think we skipped a bit in the West. We've been missing something for quite a while. For about 400 years, we've been missing the true nature bit of what we have as our birthright. Our birthright is our birth chart. And so I'm going to show you all that today. So there we go. So there's a few intros to the topics that I'm going to be discussing. Okay. So how did it all start? Well, a quote. I found a quote by Robert Zoller, who's the traditional astrologer, American traditional astrologer, along with Robert Hand and Robert Schmidt, created Project Hindsight. He had a quote. There it is. And so I've put the reference to the book. And he says, the complete study of astrology, therefore, consists of not merely digging up the writings of the ancients and assiduously studying them, but penetrating their inner meaning and rediscovering their perceptual mode. And that is the key. That I started to think more when I got that. See, we must ultimately see the world as the ancients did if we are to understand their metaphysics. So this is actually all about seeing. How do we actually perceive light? Okay, so that's what I'm here to talk about today, which is actually astrology. Okay, because of course we follow the path of the sun and we follow the moon. Both those things are luminaries that give light. So to see the light, to see. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Okay. So let's just start to have a quick look at some of the etymology of some of the words to help start to round out what I'm going to be talking about today. So to perceive is to become aware of or to gain knowledge of, or to come to know by direct experience. This actually stems from the Latin percipere, which is to grasp with the mind and to comprehend. So in astrological history, there was a huge shift in perceptual mode that actually happened several centuries ago, and that changed everything. And what that was Nicholas Copernicus announcing that he had discovered the heliocentric theory, which is where the planets were going around the sun, as opposed to Earth being at the center. Now, Earth had been at the center for 2,000 years. And that is what's called the geocentric viewpoint. Once Nicholas Copernicus announced the heliocentric viewpoint, it took 200 years for it to be accepted. And it wasn't really until Newton published Principia in 1687 that the Western world finally shifted towards the idea of the reductionist, objectivist, scientific viewpoint, which is what we've been with for 350, 400 years. But I feel very much we've missed a large chunk of our potential spirituality in the West from aligning to the heliocentric viewpoint. Why has astrology lost on that? Is because astrology was virtually destroyed in the 18th and 19th centuries. Once Newton put out Principia and the world became disenchanted, that is to say, everything became reductionist and materialistic objective viewpoint, then the humanity lost its way to a certain extent. We all became off kilter because we started to be taught that we weren't at the center. You see, for 2,000 years, from Plato and Aristotle, mankind, humanity, was taught to look at the world from its center point. And that's how we connected to the divine, to God, to divinity, which is, of course, divination, which is astrology. So we'd be from our center looking outwards. And that was the way the world was. Earth was at the center and everything went around it. And in the ego identity, in the development of third-person consciousness, i.e., when I look at, if I'm at my center looking out into the world, my consciousness goes out into the world around me, and I am at my center, and that's the kind of geocentric sort of viewpoint. When we went heliocentric, we started to be taught that, well, the sun's out over there, and we're going around it along. It kind of put humanity off kilter. Now, yes, it resulted in the modern age. We have all these great scientific technologies and developments and all sorts of things in technology and medicine, and all sorts of things have developed from that. So fair enough. It's part of human evolution that we had to go to do this change of perception. We had to do the perception that we've had for 350 years in order to get to where we are today. But we have been missing something as well, because I ask myself when I look at the world, why is there rafts of inequality, depression, anxiety? Why is humanity really in a bit of a mess? Why is the world falling apart with regards to resources and use of resources, sustainability, the ecological disasters that we have, the humanity disasters that we have? Why is everything seemingly going wrong? And so there must be what's the cure, what's the answer, what's the solution. So I think, well, we've been looking at it maybe slightly differently. Now, astrology, which we all love and practice dearly, it's our favorite sacred art, was almost destroyed. Once Newton put his theory out and the world's opinion changed, astrology got basically torn up and crushed. And out of the rubble of astrology, from about 1870 onwards, we had people like Madame Blavatsky and Alan Leo, who basically started reconstructing astrology. So they completely rebuilt astrology for us, and they built it, having had 150, 200, 300 years of heliocentric. They rebuilt astrology with the sun and the planets going around the sun, and they forgot about the fact that there was this geocentric viewpoint for 2,000 years. And so Alan Leo invented or coined the term sun signs, and astrology started to be rebuilt around the heliocentric viewpoint. Nothing wrong with that, because of course, as we all know, it kind of works. It works very well. Of course it does, But and I'm not here to defute science either, but I am here to say, how does it feel when we actually go back to our geocentric viewpoint? And I'm not even going to call it geocentric anymore. I'm actually going to call it humanocentric, because if we go back to just the idea that I myself and you yourself are at the center of your world, then everything's going around your world, right? And that is with you at the center, because you can walk from here to there, you can go from A to B, and the world's moving around you. It's not moving around the sun. Yeah. So it's moving around you. And I think that's the astrological viewpoint that we've kind of, to a certain extent, been sort of missing a bit, or not missing, maybe not fully conscious of it, because it's an unconscious thing. So that's part of my theory. Okay. So to move forwards from that point, okay, this is just a sort of introduction. I'm sort of starting to oil the wheels, as it were, of how I describe my theory today. Here's a few things about Pluto going into Aquarius. So to describe it, Aquarius is the water of emotions flowing through the rationality and thought processes of air. So the world beyond the veil of the physical world, the cosmic energy that is actualized into specific patterns of thought. This is what we're going into with Pluto going into Aquarius, okay? I mean, this is actually what's going to be happening. Because that's an Aquarian, that's the Aquarian essence right there. So it's about gaining objectivity, perspective, and a reflective approach. So air signs can be noted to being connected to the breath of life. So we also look at things like prana and pneuma. Prana is the Hindu version of breath yoga, and pneuma is a word you may or not come across before, but that is the Greek philosophy, ancient Greek version of prana. So it's the breath yoga of ancient Greece, pneuma. So we have that in various words in the West now, but it really is about the spirit of life in the breath. And of course, when we're born and the birth chart is recorded, what is the first thing we do? We take a breath. So we take in pneuma with our birth chart. So when we're born, the first breath, that's why we're so concerned with the minute of time, because the moment we are born, we are breathing in. And that is what sustains us throughout our lives, is the breath. In ancient Greece, they called that pneuma. And it's a lovely word, actually. Silent P. So it might be neuma or pneuma, but I do think it's lovely. And I think it deserves in the West, it deserves a bit of a recognition, because of course we imported from yoga, from Hindu culture, we imported prana, and everyone's doing their yoga and their prana. But we can also say, well, we can call that pneuma or pneuma or neuma. I've yet decided exactly how it's pronounced, but academics will probably tell me sooner or later. So some Aquarian keywords on the right hand of the picture there of the slide: unconventional, innovative, unique, unusual, inventive, original, intellectual, scientific, humanitarian, freedom-loving, attuned to the universal will, which I believe is the divine order, revolutionary, leading to a change in perception. So all this is kind of building up to this idea of when Pluto goes into Aquarius, we can have a bit of a sea change with regards to our perception. And it's already begun, because it just already has started, really, because Pluto went into Aquarius in 2023 for a couple of months. So a couple more etymology-based words, just to help kind of, as I said, like oil the wheels of understanding here. So to enlighten is to remove the dimness or blindness from one's eyes or heart. In the 1660s, it was to supply with intellectual light, which I feel that's a very Shakespearean phrase, as you'll see towards the end of the lecture. I have a few Shakespeare phrases to put in. Literal senses are later and less common in English, but to put light in is from the 1580s. To shed light upon is from the 1610s. Old English had inhalatum, to illuminate or enlighten, and which I think is quite a nice word. That's an interesting Old English word there. Inhalatum, kind of linked to intellectual or sounding a little bit similar. 13th to late 14th century, from Old French intellectual, which is grasped by the understanding rather than by the senses. Intellectualis, relating to the understanding, the discernment, the understanding, to understand, to discern. And then we have lucidity, from which we get things like brightness, or the French lucidité, from Latin lucidus, light, bright and clear. From lucere, to shine, again the idea of light and brightness. And from in the 1850s, that became intellectual clarity, transparency of expression. This brings me to the core image that I'm going to be showing you today. So here it is. This is actually a reproduction of a 1530s German astrologer called Peter Appian, who drew this originally. But this is basically Aristotelian cosmology and Plato's cosmology, but drawn out during the Renaissance. And so here we have the world at the center. So as you can see here, if you look to the center, you have the earth and the water. The elements, the four elements, are at the center, which are the corporeal elements of the material world that we exist within. Here we all are in the material corporeal world, existing within bodies, souls with it, out of the material, we exist. So we have the four elements, and rather nicely gave it sort of imagery. So as you can see, the earth, you've got a little house and some trees and a little river and a lake and some sea and things. And then this is the land, so it's like a little island and various things. It's quite nice, quite idyllic even. That's water and earth, the elements of water and earth. And then we have what looks to be like clouds and the movement of air. So this is the sort of penumbra even, this is the movement of the air. You can see the clouds moving around there in a sort of cyclic motion. That's air. And then after air, we have fire. So the fire element there, rarefied fire, and how the ancients used to, in fact, believe that stimulated air led to fire. And and that's quite interesting, isn't it, when you think about it? So because of course air feeds fire, and once we get to the four elements, then we reach the lunar sphere. So of course the moon is the first planetary sphere that we can see, and we are all under the moon. We're under the influence of the moon. So we are actually, in our world here, we are contained within the sphere of the moon. And that is called, or the ancients used to call it, the sublunary sphere, in which everything is subject to change. So this is why the moon has her changing faces constantly. Never shows the same face twice, because it constantly changes. And its position changes as well as it goes around the zodiac. So the moon shows that life is contingent, variable, adaptable, and changeable. And we are in that non-permanent, impermanent state of change, because we're born, we grow up, we live our lives, and then we become decrepit and corrupt and we die. And then the next cycle occurs, and the next cycle occurs, and soul is constantly growing out of materialism. So the soul is manifesting all the time, because we are part of the whole universe, but we are manifesting as soul. That's a Plotinus based idea, but we are constantly, we are an expression of soul. So life, or the cellular structure, is actually an expression of soul in materialism, in material form. So so we have this sort of cyclic thing going on underneath the moon. Life is changing all the time. Now, above the moon, we have the other spheres of the planets. Now, above the moon, everything is in fact perfect. We have a perfect universe that is unchangeable and stays the same as it always has been. It's just that the moon governs the changes, and below the moon is all changeable. So Mercury sphere and Venus sphere, as you can see them here in Latin, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, gives us our 7 traditional visible planets. Now, these are the heavens, and the heavens above, they say. Well, when you look up at night, if you were several hundred years ago and you looked up at night, you would be actually looking into the heavens. And that's what they used to do. They used to believe that when they looked up, they could see the heavenly firmament, which is the first sphere. After Saturn, you can then see this, the 8th octa, eighth sphere, which is the firmament. And inside the firmament are the zodiacal constellations that we see, the stars. And the ancients used to believe that was like a dome that we were inside of. We were encased within the dome, and God's light would come through the stars. And after that, we have the 9th, the nonu, the 9th sky, coelum, which was the crystal heaven, the crystalline heaven. So the idea of crystal. And when you look at a quartz crystal, I always see like different faces in the crystal. So I see that as aspects. So I believe that's their way of describing aspects in the chart. And then you have the 10th decimum sky, the 10th sky, which was called the primum mobile, or the first mover. Primum mobile, first movement. And this is, I'll refer to later, but this is the love of God that turns all the other spheres, because God is then outside of primum mobile, which leads us to the Latin phrase, which roughly translated is God, Dei, or the habitation, the living place, the dwelling place of the house, even the house of God, habitaculum God, Dei, and all et omni electorum, and all the elect, which is like the angels, are in this kind of sky space called the Empyrean. So it was like the house of God and all the elect are in the sky called the Empyrean. Basically, very basic, just very rough Latin translation. So we had all the spheres, and then these are the 7 spheres which made up the 7 days of the week. So we have the 7 days of the week, 7 visible planets. So we've got Moon Day, Monday, and then if you look at the French, we have Mercredi, we have Vendredi, we have Sunday in English. We have in French we have Mardi, or Spanish, Martes. We have in French we have Jeudi, or Jupiter Day. And we have Saturn Day, which is today. So today is the day of Saturn, Saturn's Day. But those are 7 days of the week. And there's more on that, another lecture about the planetary hours, but there's a lot to be said about those as well. So here we are, encased beautifully inside this changeable world governed by the emotions and feelings of the moon as it moves. So our emotions and feelings move a lot, you know, ups and downs and all sorts of things are our feeling world, governed by our five senses. Because we are in our corporeal bodies, we're governed by the five senses. So it's a beautiful kind of imagery, really. And this, to me, this is the very vital and important overlay to an astrology chart, because we have our astrology chart, you know, which is a beautiful piece of mathematical calculation. I mean, it's just gorgeous to look when you understand it. It's like a wonderful thing to perceive. But this is that overlay, that very important, I believe, overlay that's sometimes might got a little bit overlooked. I've seen it around for years. I didn't really start to think about it very much until about 5 years ago. And then I started thinking to myself, well, that needs a little bit of interpretation. And that's what got me going on it. So, you know, I started to think, well, what is the meaning of that? You know, so this Renaissance diagram is actually goes right back. It's just a diagram that actually is described in the Timaeus. So in Plato's Timaeus, and Aristotle also talked about this cosmology. And this, in fact, is the diagram that Tetrabiblos is based on. So Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, the original traditional astrology book, that is the diagram that is Tetrabiblos. That is the Tetrabiblos diagram, basically. So there we go. Right. Now that is geocentric. It's not heliocentric. Because here, as you can see, the sun is at the center of the seven spheres. You have the moon, Mercury, and Venus between Earth and the sun. So we've got our 4-element Earth center point here. The 4 elements represented here. And then we have between Earth, us standing on Earth. Here we are. We're all standing on the Earth. And between us and the sun's light, there are 3 planets. There's the moon, Mercury, and Venus. So there's the sun in the center. They are the inferior planets. Out past the sun, we have Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, which are the superior planets. So they are superior in Latin. Superior is above and past, you know, beyond, to go beyond, and inferior is to be below or underneath. So here we are on Earth, inferior with the moon, Mercury, Venus, and then the sun at the center. Now, I mean, of course, you see, when you think about people like J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. Hint, rings. Can you see rings? I can see rings, you see. And I think, oh, that's quite interesting. You see, so and he called his land Middle Earth. Now, what's in the middle there of the 7 planets is the sun. And how would you light up the Earth? With the sun's light. So I do believe J.R.R. Tolkien was using this cosmological map to be inspired. And I'll talk to you a bit about another lecture, but you get the idea. So anyway, just a few little things that also add to the general theory. Yeah, so this is well, I'll go back to this as we go along, you know. So I'm just going to keep sort of telling you more. So here's an image of the geocentric world. You know, just you know, like there it is. Earth is at the center, as you can see, and the planets going around it. And the ancients used to see the world like this. They actually used to see it like this. So they saw us, Earth, unmoved at the center, and all the planets were sort of crystalline, concentric, interlocking spheres. With each one had a point of light, which is when we see the planets moving, the wanderers, the planetes. So the planets wandering around with Earth at the center, and that's what they used to observe. And today we look at the ecliptic and we see the planets lining up around the ecliptic, you know, which of course does, but you get the idea. That everything was kind of interlocking and crystalline and perfect in that way, because they saw themselves from their center. They were at their center. Their 5 senses created their world. Sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch created their world. Think about that for a minute, because that's what we're going to get onto. And so they looked out and had the 5 senses moving out from their center into their world. And that's what everything in back to their center. As they experienced outwards, they also got inwards. So inwards and outwards was one and the same thing. That's the divine nature. That is how to connect to the creation, or to the God within, or the goddess within, to connect to the higher self, to connect to the unconscious, to connect to all these different things, connect from the inward and the outward being one and the same thing. Now, quite an interesting little fact. Well, call it a fact if you like. When you look up in the sky today, I'm looking out the window there and I can see a blue sky. Now, it's quite interesting, isn't it, that when we stand, I'll get to this in a minute. So I'll explain it in a sec. Oh, here we go. With this slide, I'll explain it. So here we are. So there are two types of motion to observe as we stand on planet Earth. One goes clockwise, which is the primary motion, and the other is counterclockwise, which is the secondary motion. Now, if I was living in Tibet, sat on my meditation cushion up on top of a mountain somewhere, or in a mountainous valley, and it was all empty space, because that's why they became so easy to be enlightened in Tibet, because there's no trees. When you go up high in the Himalayas, it's just these huge expanses of mountain valleys with snow caps, and then there's a big sky, and there's hardly anything up there apart from yaks and various things. So it's very easy to get that space, yeah, around themselves. And but just imagine yourself being in that space while I describe this, because one could sit on a meditation cushion and look and point, and by sat facing the eastern horizon, which is where the sun rises in the morning. So the sun rises in the east. So if I was sat on a meditation cushion for 24 hours and didn't move, I would see not only the sunrise, but I would also see all the other planets rise, and behind those, everything else is rising, because the planet is turning. Our planet is rotating beautifully on its own axis, and it turns once in 24 hours. Okay, so we have a complete motion of our planet rotating once in 24 hours. That is primary motion. And as you know, in astrology, the eastern horizon and its opposite, the western horizon, is the ascendant, first house cusp, and descendant, seventh house cusp. And it's also connected to the other two angles of the chart, which is the mid-heaven, which is the 10th house cusp, and the Imuncoli, or the nadir, which is the fourth house cusp. So the four angles of the chart, which rule the houses, govern the positions of the houses in our world, are constantly rotating, because that is the time of birth, you see. That's what sets the angles of the chart. Because when you don't have a time of birth, you can say, well, give me your birth date, and you can just put planets on the wheel, can't you? Which is secondary motion, which I'll get to in a minute. But the primary motion is getting the accurate time of birth to show where those four angles are pointing outwards. They're pointing into the zodiac, yeah. But they basically, it's the rotation of our own planet. So the rotation of planet Earth going around on its own axis once in 24 hours creates the four angles. And this is primary motion. Now, when planets are rising, the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, and everything goes dark. When the sun sets, it goes dark. Yeah. Well, right now I'm looking out there and I'm seeing a beautiful blue sky. Yeah. But then as the planet turns, the sun vanishes and everything goes dark. And that's nighttime. But the sun doesn't go out. The sun doesn't go out. It's constantly shining. And it's creating that beautiful blue color. Yeah, right now. And that beautiful blue color is actually the color of the heavens. Isn't that amazing? Because when we look at when the sun vanishes in the turning of the planet and goes below the western horizon and everything goes dark at nighttime, we are on, as we are turning on our planet, is we go into that shadow side of where we don't see the heavenly light of the sun. And in fact, the blue sky is consistent. That is the color of the heavens. And the heavenly light never goes out. It's just us turning on our planet that puts us into the shadow side, which is why when we then see the stars light up, we see all the night sky of stars and constellations, is because that's the reflection of the sun's light. I forgot all that. I didn't even think about that too much. But when you start to put it into context with primary motion and secondary motion, that's a huge realization. And it really made me, I was just like, oh, jaw dropping. I was like, wow, that blue sky that we see now is the color of the heavens. It's amazing, isn't it? I love it. Absolutely love it. So that's God's light, creation, light of creation. That's the light of creation. And so therefore we are in the heavens right now. We are in the light right now. It's not something that we go to after death or anything from the Christian cosmology and all that. No, we're in the heavens right now. And that's how the ancients used to see it. We are actually in the heavens right now. We are living in heavens, in the heavens, the seven heavens. Quite interesting. So the primary motion. Now, the 12 houses, the four angles set the 12 houses, different house systems, different measurements and everything. But when you start to see, when you go back that one slide to this, and I described it as being the inwards and the outwards. Yeah, so one and the same. We are inwards to experience the five senses feed into our perception of the world. As we look outwards, we're getting an inwards outwards. We are like a mirror or reflection of our experience. It's like being inside a house, isn't it? We're kind of nicely contained, aren't we? Nicely contained. I think it's like a inside a house. It's like God's house. Yeah. So we have these houses that go between the four angles, which are the sphere that we are in. So we're in this kind of sphere. The four angles point to the four spheres, if you like, that create our own sphere. More on this later, but I'm giving you an idea now to start getting us ready for what I'm going to show you. So the planets are going around the zodiac. They're the secondary motion, and they are, of course, counterclockwise. Yeah. So it's the planets going around the zodiac. After Aquarius, they go into Pisces. After Pisces, they go into Aries, and so forth. Whilst so they are rising. Yes, they're rising on the horizon according to primary motion, because the ascendant is in fact going this way. Yeah. So the ascendant rises. So everything's kind of, anyway, you get the idea. It's clockwise and counterclockwise. And so it's basically what we're looking at there is what we could say that God gave us our senses and our eyes so that we can observe the wheeling movements of the mind, because it's a wheel within a wheel of consciousness. And there's something at our center, isn't there? Like the hub of a wheel. When you have a wheel, if you imagine a cartwheel going around on a wheel, and I'm also talking about things like chakras and all sorts of things here, but there's a center point, isn't there? Yeah, that doesn't move. Yeah, and you can flip that wheel on its side. Think of a millstone in a grinding the flour in a mill. Whatever. There's center points. There's a hub or an access point around which everything goes. But that hub exists because nothing moves in the center. Things go around it. So from my perspective, I'm at my center and things are going around it. Let's carry on. So again, just another idea here of how it's all moving. But we have the just to give you the idea of this idea of primary motion and secondary motion, and then we can put ourselves as our let's use our visual sight as the center point here. So we've got the eye of, we see the world through this space, and that is the primary motion. Okay, so these four angles are all points of awareness that we incarnated to at birth. When we were born, yeah, there was a moment that we were born, was the moment when we became ourselves. First breath, the pneuma, the prana. First input of five senses, because we come down through the moon, or we wake up, we are born, we enter the world, and we have a moment, we take our first breath. we then become ourselves. And from that point, but at the beginning, at birth, we are pure awareness. Once we're here and incarnate, then our awareness starts turning into consciousness. So there's a fine line there, a division point between awareness at center and the development of consciousness starting from moment one. Yeah, start breathing in, and my consciousness is developing. I'm starting to get input into that will eventually develop my ego and my identity, which is like the very beginning of life. So I'm starting to build like layers of consciousness upon my pure awareness at center, which is my spiritual core, my spiritual center, around which everything rotates. Pretty special, right? I mean, it's lovely when you start thinking about it. And so now we can call this, or in medieval times, they used to say that when we're still at our center, we will be kindly inclining into its stead, which I think is a beautiful way of putting the fact that everything settles back into its center point. If you just observe the mind carefully and quietly, you'll see how it settles back into itself each time. Once you become aware of the mind, you have to kind of see what I'm talking about here. But in medieval conception, everything was made up of the four contraries. We had hot, cold, moist, and dry, which is kind of how the elements are based on. So the union of hot and dry becomes fire, that of hot and moist becomes air, cold and moist water, and cold and dry earth. There is also the fifth element, ether, that humans do not experience, but it's the binding force that brings it all together. So it's the binding element that binds the five senses together into a unification. Because when I look at the world around me, my five senses are giving to me all at once. In Zen, they call it the 10,000 things. There are 10,000 things happening simultaneously. Our five senses are picking up 10,000 things right now, all at once. And it's ether that binds those together. That's my theory anyway. So the fifth element, the etheric, is binding together the four elements, which is in Zen meditation, 10,000 things at once. Because as I'm talking to you, I'm looking at the Zoom, but I'm also hearing myself talk. I'm sat in a seat. I've got various lights. I've got a window out there. I've got lights here. I've got things in the room. 10,000 things rolling over in milliseconds of experience. 10,000 things happening at once. So in the sublunary world, all the elements have sorted themselves out. Earth is the heaviest, which gathers itself together at the center. And as you can see here, I described it a bit earlier. Earth is heavy and falls to the base. So it's experienced as an inward and downward experience, Earth. We receive it as inwards and downwards. Water is the same, inwards and downwards element, which is lighter than Earth. Water is lighter than Earth because it flows on top of Earth. Yeah, so you got Earth. If you drop a clod of earth into the water, it sinks to the or stones. They sink underneath the water. Lighter water, and then above that we have air. Of course, where we are now, circulating around us, everywhere. Air, circulating above us and around us. And then the stimulated air turns into rarefied fire, which is the creative force, the creativity. So the fire, the lightest of all, which was sort of whenever it was free, flew up to the circumference of nature to form a sphere just below the orbit of the moon. Oh, it's just delightful when you think about it. It's wonderful sort of imagery. It's actually very Shakespearean. As you will see, we will be talking about. Well, I'll show you a couple of nice Shakespearean things in a minute, but I'm going to show you a quote at the end. So I just want to keep that in mind for that quote at the end about the fire rising up to just below the orbit of the moon. There it is again. Peter Appian's 1530 diagram of Plato's cosmology, Aristotle's cosmology, Ptolemy's tetrabiblos. Five senses, there they are, always inputting into our center. Five senses that we receive. And in astrology, the moon, the first sphere, governs what? Feelings and reactions and responses. the three key words of the moon, feelings, reactions, and responses, are, what are they ruled by? The five senses, or rather, those three keywords are geared into the five senses. Because here's a hand, if I touch a hot stove, I go, ow, right? That's a reaction. Yeah. And it's a feeling as well, But if I smell something acrid, I go, oh, blimey, smelling salts. Oh, dear, If I taste something sour and bitter, my reaction, if I see something I don't like, or maybe I see something I like or I love, oh, it's wonderful. Hear some beautiful music. Oh, delightful sounds, the melodies, the harmony of the world. Five senses feeding in to the corporeal human body, but then at the same time, that body is giving us what's encased by the moon. So the first responder, the first thing that we get with our five senses is our lunar reactions, responses, and feelings. Okay? There it is. See? Like the moon is that encasing us within our corporeal existence. Now, that's for all the planets, right? We have the Chaldean order. So Chaldea goes right back to Mesopotamia. We're talking earlier than 3,500 BC. So Chaldea, Sumeria, Mesopotamia. And the Chaldean order is the order of the planets. Of course, the fastest moving planet is the moon, whizzing around as it does. 28.3 days gives us one full zodiacal cycle around Earth. The slowest one, Saturn, 28.6 years, or 29 years, it's about the same. It's like the same to the same, moon to Saturn. There's a kind of link there, isn't there, between the innermost sphere and the outermost sphere. And but you get the general idea. And to me, and my theory is, this is the movement of consciousness. This is the movement of consciousness, because the moon's the fastest. So let's just go back to the idea of I just burnt my hand on a hot stove. Ow. I'm going, ow. So I go think, I put some cold water on it, put some things on it to help bandage it up or whatever, right? But then I'll start talking about it afterwards. It'll be like, blah, 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 blah. It'll be a point of conversation for a little while, because so it's gone to Mercury. So my feelings and reactions have gone immediately to Mercury when I start talking about it, Then I can't even maybe hold hands with someone because it hurts too much. So, I'm trying to tell you how how things move on out to the spheres, right? That goes to Venus, see, and then we go to the sun, which is anyway, I'm just speaking of, that's a very brief example. There are much better examples, but the idea here is that everything starts with a thought. Everything starts with a feeling. Everything that you want to manifest. Now, this is where I'm starting to talk to you with regards to the New Age holistic community of people who talk about law of attraction and manifestation. These are really big New Age keywords, and there are all those people out there who don't do any astrology at all, right? And you know who I mean. That's a good 95% of the New Age community. They don't even have a clue. They read their 12 sun signs in the horoscope column, but they don't have a clue. Yeah, and they don't want to have a clue either, which really blows my mind, because most people are just like blank to it. Astrology, what? Ooh. I can't believe it sometimes, because they all want psychics and mediums and things, and they don't want astrology. And I'm just like, okay, then. Oh, well, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, basically, yeah, if you want to learn to manifest and your law of attraction, then you need to follow the divine order, because the divine order is the movement of mind. Everything starts, the five senses create thoughts arising. The five senses create thoughts arising. Okay, so the input is that mad raging river that I referred to earlier of mind, is all the 10,000 things of Zen all at once. And it's a thing in Zen, they call it the 10,000 things. All that input makes the raging river of mind, of consciousness, with this flow of stuff. Yeah. And therefore, yeah, well, where does it all start? Who invented the Apple iPhone? Steve Jobs did. Apple did, but it started with an idea. I want to have a phone that people could touch the screen and move things around. Who invented the computer mouse? Well, someone did, I mean, you get the idea, right? Who invented a pen? Yeah. Came as a thought first, who wrote a book? Well, it comes as thinking first, and out of thinking consciousness develops. At the very center behind thinking is awareness, the very fact that we are alive, and then the planets are ruling and governing each stage as we go out and out and out. So we start with thinking and we're moving outwards all the time into our space around us. And this is, therefore, in our chart, we have the primary motion, which is the 4 angles, which begin things. And then that leads into secondary motion, which is the planets then creating reality for themselves. So this is the astrological enlightenment. As you can see, hello, Christine.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is this a good time to have a break, or how long do you want to?
Well, yeah, it is a good time to have a break, actually.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I'm going to leave that slide up though. There, the
Yeah,
Seven
that's
Ages of
good.
Man, which is from Shakespeare's As You Like It, which is
Yeah.
like a form of Fidaria, which is the Babylonian system of timing. This is the most simplest one that used in the West.
Yeah.
The Seven Ages of Man. So I'll leave that slide up like that. And having a break for how long?
Well, we used to do 10 minutes. Is that all right?
10 minutes. Yeah. Everyone happy? I hope so far. I hope everyone's enjoying this.
Yeah, no, it's really.
I'm about to do the best bit yet, which is the actual kind of really finding the true nature. And from that, I will then show you how it's within ancient culture as well as the sort of rounding up of the whole thing. So
no, that's very interesting. Interesting place to pause as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So are we leaving this open as a Zoom? Can I go and make myself a cup of tea?
Yes.
I'll just leave the Zoom exactly like this with that slide on. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I tell you what, shall I pause the recording?
Yes. Yeah. That's a good idea.
I can do that. I've got to work out how to do that now. Actually, I don't know how to do it. Stop share. Hang on a minute. There's the pause button. Resume. There we go. Excellent. And we'll do a share screen again. Hopefully. That should be good. Ah, yeah. Just to check, do you see the do you see that?
Yeah, I can see you've got the sidebar on as well, though. Oh, that's fine. That's good. Yeah.
Okay, so we're back to the 7 Ages of Man, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is actually from Midsummer's Night's Dream. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was in the Renaissance and Shakespearean times, this was the way in the West of like a basic Fidaria, and so I've based my book, The Divine Order, around this Fidaria, around this Western style Fidaria. Okay, and so it's the stages of life, and this to me is the development out of awareness into consciousness. So when we're born, day one, we are pure awareness, and then consciousness starts to develop around ourselves. So we're getting to know ourselves, getting to know who we are, which takes a lifetime of process. So the first 4 years is the moon, and then you have, Mercury phase of 10 years, and then a Venus phase of 8 years, and then the sun of 19, Mars of 15, Jupiter of 12, Saturn of 30. Once you've done the full cycle of the 7 spheres, then you go back to the moon again. So basically, that's the sort of cycle of getting to know yourself better, and this tallies with what I'm about to show you, which are some actual experiments in true nature. I think to do this, actually, I'm going to go back a few slides and show you this. I think we'll keep it on that slide, and I might also make reference to to that one again, but I think we'll go with this one because I think this is a key to sort of understanding things. So what I'm about to show you are what I would call self-evident experiments. So what that means really is that you're going to see for yourself what happens. All right. So these are designed to show you your true nature instantaneously. And to be absolutely honest with you, you have to do these to understand what I'm going on about. You can't just listen in, you actually have to sort of take part. Okay. So keeping them as simple as possible. But and to a certain extent, I wish I was in a room with you right now with a group in person. We would get a lot more out of doing these. I've been doing these at a couple of different psychic fairs of late, and I'm getting very good responses from people. You know, people are like, "Oh my god!" I hope that I can transmit that to you today. You can see what I'm trying to show you. So please do what I ask as I go through each experiment. There are about 5 experiments, and please go through them with me. So we're just going to go through, and what it is, the key to this is I'm showing you the difference between awareness and consciousness. And once you've got that difference, you will understand the geocentric place, the humanocentric place that we are in, as in the whole world moves around you. Okay, and that is what's going to lead to not only opening your third eye, but also showing you what a transit is. Because a transit, when you think about it, indicates movement, does it not? You know, transit, something moving. But I don't see, when I have a Saturn transit, I don't see Saturn, do I? Do you? You know, no, but I experience things around me from my central viewpoint that could be seen to be or said to be Saturnian in their nature. So if I understand my true nature at center, then I can see things differently, which is going back to the idea of the etymology of light and enlightenment. So this is why I'm showing you these experiments, okay? So everything's got a reason and a purpose. I'm trying to, in this talk today, show you as much as I can. But I do hope, really genuinely hope, that I get an invite to the Astrological Association conference, because they've never invited me. I keep applying and they always refuse me. And I think, having had a diploma for about 14 years, it's about time I got invited. But I'm going to show you all this in a proper workshop. You know, I will spend the whole day with you doing these, and we'll really get to ground with what true nature is and how to apply astrology to it, which is actually what I've got to. That's the Pluto and Aquarius bit. So if you've got any influence with the Astrology Association, do put a good word in. So I get my invite to actually hold a workshop, not just an hour, but a workshop, like a whole day of it, because I do need to show you. And then everybody can come from that place of having seen this, because this is Pluto into Aquarius, okay? That's how I see it. Anyway, that's my ego talking. There you go. Right, so experiment number 1. This is called pointing at your true nature. All right, so get ready for this. Okay, so how to describe this to you? All right, it's a pointing experiment. So I want you to have a pointing finger. Okay, there's your finger. Hold it up for yourself now, and I want you to basically understand this. When you point anywhere in the world, you're pointing at appearances. Okay. So you are distant from what you are looking at, and you see things, you see objects around you, okay? So I'm going to show you that you direct your attention by pointing at things or objects, all right? This is very imperative to do this experiment, right? So I want to now experiment with some pointing things. What I'm actually going to show you is how, when you put where attention goes, consciousness grows. That's the key phrase. Where my attention goes, consciousness grows. How do I put my attention to something? By pointing to it. So here's an example and a few examples. I point at a cup. What is that? In my mind, it's a teacup and it's got tea in it. Okay? Because I've always known that as a cup, shaped as a cup, with a handle on it. And that's what I have my tea in. I could point to that. It's a Buddha. I've always known it to be that. It's the same shape of object that my mind has always told me is a Buddha. A wooden box, a picture of the constellations, books. Get the idea. So in the room that you are in now, I want you with your pointing finger, you have to do this. Good that your cameras aren't on. You don't, just do it for yourself. Okay. That your cameras are, just point to things in the room around you. Point at your light above your head. Point at pictures on the wall. Point at objects in the room. Point at the floor. Point at the desk. Point at your computer screen. Anything you like. But what you're doing when you point is you're putting your attention to it. And what comes up in your mind, in your consciousness, is the object that you're pointing at. So just tell yourself, yes, point at some shapes, some objects, some things in the room, and tell yourself the color of it, the shape of it, and what you associate it, what name you give it. So I'm pointing at my computer screen, it's full of imagery. I'm pointing at my cup, I'm pointing at my computer mouse, I'm pointing at my keyboard, I'm pointing at books, I'm pointing at the floor, I'm pointing at, just do that now in your space that you are in the room that you're in. When you've done that, and you start to realize that when you point your attention outwards, your consciousness reacts in a way, right? I want you to now point at your foot. So I'm doing that right now. I'm pointing at my foot and it's got a slipper on it. I can see the slippers and it's got a sock as well. And I'm pointing at that. And I know that's my foot. And now I want you to point at your knee. So there I am pointing at my knee and it's got fabric on it, and it's curved and rounded, always as it always has been. It's my knee. And now I want you to point at your torso, the center here. Just point at your torso like that. You can see what I'm doing? I'm pointing at my torso, and I can see it's my torso. I can see there's a buttons on my shirt. Right? Point at torso. Now, the next thing I want you to do is to take your pointing finger and point it at the space that you're looking out of. See what I'm doing? Can you see that I'm pointing at the space that I look out of? Right? I'm pointing there. I'm pointing at the space that is meant where my face is. How would I describe to myself now, having pointed at all the objects, shapes, and things, but how would I describe to myself what I'm pointing at now? Because I can't say that it's my face that I'm pointing at because there's no mirror to tell me, right? I'm pointing at the space that I'm looking out on. So my direction of attention has been directed outwards, pointing my attention outwards at objects, but then I point back at the space I'm looking at, and what am I pointing at? What do you see? Well, I'm now looking inwards because I've turned the direction of my attention 180 degrees around from the objects out there to me, who is the subject, to the place that I am looking out of. So when I do that, can I ask myself, do I see my own face? Do I see my own face? When I'm doing this, do you see your own face? And I'm not talking about Zoom or anything like that. Do you see your own face when you point at it? Do you see anything at all there? Do you see any color or shape or any movement? Because when I look into the place where other people see my face, I find no color or shape here. Instead, I find boundless capacity or awareness on this side of my pointing finger, because I'm pointing, look what I'm doing. And you must do the same. hold your hand there, pointing at the space that you're looking out of, because it is boundless capacity. It's, in fact, the capacity is empty, it's clear, it's transparent, it's self-evidently awake and aware. I'm actually pointing at the whole world. Think about that for a minute, because I'm pointing at the space I'm looking out of, but what I'm looking out of contains the whole world, because I'm moving around with it. You see it moving around with me. The whole world, I'm pointing back at the whole world. You get that? I hope you do. Because at the same time, this capacity is full of everything happening in it. The capacity, the finger pointing at this thing or object that was before we were looking outwards, going like this, but now we're looking inwards. So the capacity is full of everything that happens in it. Yeah, my finger is in it. My pointing hand is in it. My view of the scene beyond it, as in everything, plus sounds, plus feelings. Remember I talked about the five senses pointing to being the first encasement. The five senses is the encasement. I am now seeing who I really am, because I'm seeing the boundless one, the one, at the very heart of myself, the one in whom the world is happening. So I'm moving around there. As I move around, pointing back, in fact, the whole world is happening in me, in this space that I am in. Because when I do this, as I focus on the space around me, I can't see my own head. Have you ever thought about that? Focus on the space that you are in the room that you're sitting in now. Focus on the space around you, and can you see your own head? No, I just see the world in it. I see the world inside my head, like a mirror, like a complete Dharma, the Dharma, reflected completely back, because it's in me. It's me. So, what do you find? Are you looking out of this wide open, crystal clear awareness? Now, that takes us to the next experiment. So I want you to point with one index finger pointing outwards at the world. So take one finger, point it that way. Take the other finger and point at what you're doing before. So do this. Two fingers, pointing fingers, cross them over like that, and then change that direction. So you're pointing one in and one out, like that. So you can see that. Yeah. But you must do this in front of your own space, doing that. Point with one index finger outwards at the world, and with the other index finger point inwards towards the space that you are looking out of. The finger pointing outwards points at a scene full of countless shapes and colors. It's very complicated out there. There's lots going on. Remember I talked about the 10,000 things? Well, there's 10,000 things going on right there, isn't there? The more time you spend looking at it, the more there is to see. And most of it is hidden, obscured by other things in one way or another. The view inside, with the pointing finger going in, is very different. Here, the space is not hidden at all. You can see it all, and you can see it all at once. When I point inwards, everything's in there. When I point outwards, and I put my attention out to the objects, there's loads of it going out there. But when I point it inwards, it's kind of directly in me. There it is. So the view in is different. Here, the space is not hidden at all. You can see it all and all at once. It's right here. It is right here, right now. It is what I am. It is the part of me that I can never lose, because it's just there. It's pure, and it's always there. It's part of being alive. What could be simpler than seeing this and being this? Because just to be completely and purely at my center, at the hub of the wheel that moves around, the hub of the geocentric universe, the very center, all the planets moving around me. What was happening for 2,000 years? Plato's Timaeus, Aristotle's cosmology. Ptolemy's tetrabiblos, the hub at the center. We are looking out into the world, the four elements. We look out into that, and we are looking at this pure space at center, moving outwards. And this is what we're born into as well, because the moment of awareness is the moment of birth. The birth chart is this. I'm born into the world as this pureness, this pure sense of awareness, but it's full of the outside world around me, which is the chart, my birth chart. It's full of me going outwards. So it's uncomplicated, it's transparent, it's open to inspection, nearer than near, and it's given in its entirety. So is this who I really actually am? Am I in fact pure awareness at my center? One could say one is empty of everything, and at the same time capacity for the endlessly changing view outside. Room for an amazing world. So to find out, just look. See, the space here is simpler than simple. It's just your center. I'm just looking when I'm the outside world is inside at the same time as it's outside, which is this humanocentric or geocentric view. So now I'm going to do the third experiment. So I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, okay? And I want you to keep your eyes closed. Because you can see me on the Zoom, and I'm going to keep my eyes open for this, but it's important that you keep your eyes closed for this part of the experiment, okay? This is the third experiment. It's called the closed eyes experiment. So it's a key and imperative that you keep your eyes closed for the next minute or two while I explain this to you, so you can enjoy this experience. So 3, 2, 1, close your eyes. Now, when your eyes are closed, who or what are you? When you go into that space, can you say who or what you are? Can you ask yourself, take your time with this as well, see it as a bit of a meditation, okay? When your eyes are closed and you're getting used to being in that closed eye space, ask yourself, how big are you? Keeping your eyes closed, ask yourself, what shape are you? Keeping your eyes closed, start to have a look around to see what you find in your closed eyes space. Get a feeling to see, as it were, where you are keeping your eyes closed. Would you say that where are the boundaries? That's what I'm asking you. Where are the boundaries when your eyes are closed? Shape, shape, size, boundaries. It's infinite in there. There's an infinity. When your eyes are closed, there's an infinite space of mind within. It's infinite. Now, the scientists, in our reductionist scientific viewpoint, they say we live in outer space. We are floating in outer space. But we are also floating in inner space. Because when you close your eyes, you go into your inner space. At nighttime, you dream with your eyes closed. That is your inner space. In fact, we spend almost half our lives in our inner space, and we're dreaming in our inner space. Okay? So can you seek out your boundaries in your infinite mind? Well, you can't technically, can you? So but don't rely on memory or on what others say about you. Instead, rely on what is given at the present moment. Yeah, when my eyes are closed, I don't have a boundary, right? Now, if I was to put a sensation of feeling my fingers, yeah, if I rub my hands together with my eyes closed, do I know that I'm rubbing my hands together? Well, I'm just getting a sensation, right? But it's something that is manifesting or appearing inside my closed eye space. So when your eyes are closed, still keeping them closed, please. Do you have a name? How old are you? Are you in fact infinite? because you can't put an age on yourself when your eyes are closed. Are you male or female? Are you in fact human? What are you? Right? What are we? Are we not soul manifesting? Manifesting an energy? Are we not like an energy? Because we give ourselves all these things. What we are is awareness at our center. The closed eye space is our awareness at the very center. So can you define your shakedown on the evidence that you have when your eyes are closed? Well, I technically can't, right? Can you count how many toes you've got? Can you see how your experience is, because that closed eye space, there's nothing to measure. Yeah, there's no measurement. Can you measure left and right with your eyes closed? Can you measure up and down? Can you measure forwards and backwards? We're in an unmeasured space. Yeah, the pure awareness is infinite. Yes, it's where we dream, but it's infinite. There's an infinite space in there. In fact, it's outer space represented as inner space. When I open my eyes, wait though, please, because you're in that boundless space, in that infinite space of experience. So yes, it's full of various sensations and thoughts and feelings that arise inside it. I'm still thinking about things. I've still got my thoughts. Of course, I dream in there, but all these things are happening in that space. But to be in a body now, what does that actually mean when my eyes are closed? Are you in fact as spacious now as when your eyes were open? The first two experiments, you had your eyes open and we were pointing at the space. But when your eyes are closed, the same space is there. It's there again. So when your eyes are closed, you don't have the measurement of shape, size, or anything like that. Your experience could be said that you are formless and edgeless capacity that is filled with all kinds of things. The five senses feeding into it, the five senses that we talked about, sensations, from which thoughts, feelings, sounds, everything arises within that space. Now, having had your eyes closed for a couple of minutes, on the count of 3, and you become aware of that infinite space that you are in, and it's no measurement there, on the count of 3, I want you to open your eyes. 3, 2, 1, boom, open your eyes. Hello, world. It all floods back in. In fact, it floods in like a creation myth might flood in the Great Flood, because everything just suddenly goes ping, and we're back where we were in this world. But the space, is the space still there? Yeah, well, my experience is that the space is still there. But around me, geocentrically speaking, everything manifests. And I start to immediately become aware of things again, and measurement returns. Now, measurement is astrology, because the ancients measured the sky. So when my eyes are open, my 5 senses are feeding back to me. That's the space that my chart is created in. My birth chart of measurement, the degrees of the circle and all the angles, are all when my open-eyed space out here. But at my center, at the hub in which the wheel goes around and the spheres go around, there's a still, calm awareness, pure, infinite space, like the outer space the planets are placed in, is the inner space inside me as well. I am, in fact, a reflection of the whole universe that's going on around me whilst it's inside of me and outside of me. So when they say, as above is so below, and so below is as above, and as within is so without, and so without is as within, you're starting to get the idea of those ancient astrological phrases and what they actually mean. Because I am as infinite as the space that is around me. It's within me as without, without and within, above and below. So you start to get some ideas of how important it is to actually take the astrology as the space of measurement around. Yeah. Okay. So that's that experiment. And now we move on to the next one. So what is at your center is everything, the whole universe. It is your inner space. And now you are aware of it. And it is a wonderful realization, of course. There is spacious capacity at your center that is as obvious with your eyes closed as with your eyes open. Now, in a lot of the ancient religions and texts and things, we are entering the space by doing all this. You are entering into what is called the void. Now, in the terms of numerical systems, the Arabic Islamic astrologers invented the number 0, the O, they invented 0, which of course is the beginning of each zodiac sign. We start with 0 degrees of a sign. And there's another thing in astrology called the void of course moon. The true meaning of the void of course moon, if you start to apply what I'm showing you today with the experiments, in fact, I'm going to do one more experiment first before we get there. I'm going to show you now the sphere that we are in. So we're now going to do my favorite. So I want you to now, this is the opening of the third eye. Okay, so this is also known as the all-seeing eye, which we see as the eye of providence or the eye of God in the clouds. It's represented in things like various different divination decks, and esoterically it's all over the place. You see it in churches and things, all sorts of places. But you can see the all-seeing eye. So I'm going to show you now how to discover the all-seeing eye, as we all have one, and it's rather special and it's wonderful. And when you use it from this point forwards, it will give you your instant link to the creation, to the divine creator. Okay, so I want you to firstly put your hands together like a pair of binoculars. Create a pair of binoculars with your hands like this, and put them on like this. So it's a bit like looking through a pair of, because I've looked through at the world through my two eyes, through my two apertures, my whole life. I've always been two, like this. But when I look around as my two eyes like that, I actually start to spread the fingers and thumbs like this to create a space here. And this is a wonderful space because when I actually open my eyes, my space like this, and I put my hands each side, wave your fingers at yourself, and you can see your fingers on the edges of your vision, the periphery. And you bring your hands back a bit more, and you can start to see, if you put your hands forward, there they are. See my hands. Please do this. This is very important that you do this to get this, because it's so simple. It's fantastic once you've done it and realize it. Bring my hands forward. There they are. Bring my hands back. Now, pull your hands back, and they vanish. You need to pull them back until they're gone, like behind your head, so you can't see them. Except, yes, I can't see my hands, so they're not in my consciousness, but I am aware that my hands are there. So I have awareness that my hands are there, but consciously I cannot see them until I bring them forwards again. Here they come, and at the edges again. There they are around the edge. Waving my fingers again like this. Now, there's an edge. See that edge? Yeah. I need to bring your hands up around the top, so you can see your fingers at the top, waving to see around the top edge. Bring them around like this, like this, like this. And I become, in fact, that I'm looking at the world through a frameless, edgeless window on the world, which is full of everything, and it moves with me. So when I move, that edge moves. In fact, can I find the edge? If I try looking for it, so I'll go find the edge. Where's the edge? Up there. Well, it's not, because it moves with me. Over there. No. Down there. No. Everything up there. The edge moves with me. I am, in fact, inside a single eye, a third eye, because I have two eyes here, and the third eye is here. Now, that's it. You just opened your third eye. But this is wonderful, because this edge, everything pours around the edge, consciousness. Everything flows into consciousness. Behind it is a huge space of infinity. That's my infinite space of awareness behind it, at the edge. Around the front of it, I have everything inside my consciousness. Now, in Plato's Timaeus, he talks about being inside the sphere. as the perfect God's manifestation for humanity was to create them inside a sphere. It's perfect. And here it is. Here's your sphere. And it's Pythagoras' music of the spheres. Next, you could also say that next time you walk into a church and you look at the stained glass windows and you see all the saints with halos around themselves and all the Christian iconography with halos, what are they doing? That's the halo. I'm showing you the halo. But also when you look at Buddhist tanka paintings and you see Buddhas and Buddhist deities, they all sit around with orbs around their heads. Or you look at Shiva in Hinduism, Shiva the Nataraj, dancing the Nataraj in his circle. I'll just show you a Shiva. This is Shiva here. So he's dancing his dance of creation, and he's dancing in front of a circle. He's actually in front of it. If you turn it on its side, it looks like he's inside his circle. But if you turn it on its side, he's in front of his circle, just like I showed you just now. Yeah. So here's the Nataraj, which is huge in Hindu religion. Yeah. So you get the idea, I hope, that we're inside a sphere. And our birth charts, of course, are like inside a set of spheres. So here we are, inside our spherical space. We are at our geocentric center, and the whole world moves around us. And when we sleep, we are in that infinite space that is the outer as well as the inner. And when we are awake, that space is infinite around us, and we give it measurement, which is astrology. I hope that's fairly clear. I hope you get some understanding of what I'm getting at here, because it's quite nice to be in this space. Because you can now connect with your divinity. Divinity is just an understanding of light, okay? Enlightenment, yeah? Or lucidity, should we say. So you're in the light. Nothing's really changed. I've just shown you the difference between awareness and consciousness. You're still the same as you ever were. You have your first person awareness, which is you at your center, and you have your third person consciousness, which is your ego and identity, which is what we naturally fall into, which is why Shiva is pictured in front of the void of awareness, because that's the ego place. That's where the ego exists. We exist in our third person objective state. So we're always in front of it. In astrology, we have a thing called the void of course moon. Now, the moon moves through a sign, and it gets to, when it makes its last aspect, what's it doing? What are we meant to do in the void of course moon? When the moon goes void of course, we're meant to be meditative, relaxing, not doing anything, chilling, because it's a perfect time to access your state of awareness. It's a perfect time to go first person awareness, because the moon is moving through a level of consciousness called a zodiac sign. It's gaining in numbers of degrees, so the complexity of the consciousness is growing, and then it changes sign and goes back to zero. And that zero is the void, because in numerical systems, you have numbers 1 through to 9. Before 1 is O, which is O, which is the zero, because that's the now here, or the nowhere, or the no thing. So I'm showing you the no thing, because in Sufism, which is spiritual Islam, in Hinduism, in Buddhism, they all say the same thing. We are in the no, we are just reflections, we're just mirrors of the universe around us. Our birth chart shows us how we measure up to that space around us, how we develop an ego and identity that we exist within, and we do our third person awareness. So at heart, our true nature is emptiness, which is the no thing, which is the nowhere, the now here, the here and now. So it's, I'm basically kind of giving you an Alan Watts lesson, the great 60s, similar kind of stuff, but I'm modernizing it for astrology. That's basically what we're doing. But what, this edge is wonderful. Yeah, this edge is our spiritual. It's beautiful. Now you've discovered it, you can enjoy it, because believe you me, this is really blissful. To be in this space is wonderful, and I need you to practice it, not just looking at a Zoom screen. Just enjoy it. Go for a walk in the park. Yeah, just go and just do this. Done. You're in the space. You can go first person awareness, go third eye, all the time to do that. If you want to create some peace and quiet for yourself, some calmness, to find your connection to God and to your center and to your divinity and to your awareness and your unity, do third eye. Boom, there you're in it. Yeah. Or do the pointing experiment. Point back at yourself. Point outwards to point back. Now, why am I telling you all this? Why on earth am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because at the beginning of my talk, I was saying how Madame Blavatsky and Alan Leo and everything built heliocentric astrology. Yeah, it's great. Nothing wrong with it at all. Out of that came psychological astrology. Carl Jung hid most of his enlightenment studies and called it psychology. Psyche, the origins of the word psyche, is actually breath. It actually means pneuma. You can follow its etymology, but it means psyche means the input in and out of the breath. Psyche, psychology. It's the psychology. It's the movement of breath creating life, creating the movement of mind. So we're taking all these things. I'm just taking these things and showing you actually what we missed in the West for about 400 years. Now, there's so much more to tell you about. You know, there's more lectures. I hope you can handle me for more lectures because I'll give more as I go along. But for now, you've got the Chaldean order, you've got the 7 ages of man. This is your development of awareness through to consciousness. Have a look at this. I've shown you the 7 spheres. Now, when you look at a flat pool of water, of which there's a reflection, but if you take a drop and drop it into the water, what do you see? I see the spheres. Music of the spheres, the harmony of the world, the resonance or the reverberation of one of the elements. It's quite beautiful, really. Ripples in the water is like ripples through time because it's actually created. That's created by a movement in time anyway, because the drop lands in the water and then it's a movement of time which develops consciousness. Same theory. There's a drop going in, but you get the idea. The drop is like a thought or a sense, one of the 5 senses going into the space that then creates spheres around us. The 7 spheres that I showed you are all inside the edge. So that diagram I've been showing you of the 7 spheres is all around the edge. That also contains, so it's the 7 planets. So it's like a fractal, you know, 7 planets are all the same space within our space, but they manifest through us differently. They're moving through us at different times. That's transit. And I'll get to that in a minute. Actually, I'm going to describe transits in a minute. But you get the idea, I hope. A tree. A tree is pure awareness. Not necessarily consciousness, is it? But it's awareness, because the seed or the seed grew, say an acorn, yeah? An acorn seed fell in the ground, or a bird drilled it into the ground. The acorn sprouted and the sapling began its journey of growth. As awareness, it never moves from its center. A tree never moves from its center because it finds its center and then develops it from center, moving out season after season after season, year after year after year. The awareness is establishing further and further awareness. So you get the sapling at the center, this starting here, and season after season, it makes rings of space that it's growing into. So that's the tree. So it's in nature. So like ripples of water. So tree rings. Yeah. But then there's also spiders' webs. Yeah. A spider is pure awareness because it creates this beautiful web out of its awareness. It has an awareness to grow the web, to create the web. It sits on the edge waiting for something to trigger its consciousness. Something lands in the web bounces around, and suddenly the spider comes active. It consciously goes to go and get whatever's fallen into the web. To add to that, I think it's a beautiful picture because you've got the dew of the moon, because it's the moon's light that creates dew, the moisture. So here you have lots of little orbs of dew caught in the awareness of the spider's web, which is like layers or rings. Nature tells us exactly how to do it. This is shamanism. So it's nature showing us exactly these things. We see it in water, we see it in tree rings, we see it in spiders' webs. We see it in early cultures. Here's an Aboriginal guide showing us something on the ceiling of a cave in a national park in Australia. He's showing us the spheres. He's showing us that there's an empty center, because you can see emptiness at the center, empty, but then full of the world moving outwards, yeah, as time and space moving out around us, yeah. So this is the awareness of time and space as it grows around us. Empty center, empty awareness, everything moves out. The transits of time moving out. These are what they call the storylines. But to have a story, to be once upon a time, as it were, you have to start, and it takes time to tell a story. So here are the storylines that they call in Aboriginal, but everything's linked together, like a spider's web, like ripples, like tree rings. So they've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years. So here's a graphic representation of that. Same in other cultures. In fact, it's everywhere, because you can also have it in Hopi and Navajo. So here is the Hopi, and here is the Navajo. And here are their two rings. Yeah. And on top of their heads, or above, it's like if you take, these look like the rings. If you take those rings there, imagine you're holding a disc of rings and you flip it on its side and then put it on top of your head. Pop. It's like you can see the rings. Yeah. Like sort of on a sort of side view. Not like that, but like that. Why do you think Taurus, the bull, Aries, the ram, Capricorn, the goat, why do you think they're zodiac signs? Is it because they have extrusions coming out of their awareness that grow with time? Yeah, maybe, right? So, thoughts. Same with the Hopi. Here, though, you have the spiral, which is labyrinth, of course, but the spiral of time. Because things don't happen once, they happen again and again. Time is not linear, it's spirals. So things happen again and again, and we gain wisdom and consciousness. It's like the tree gains its rings, it experiences winter, then it experiences spring, then autumn, experiences the seasons. Like spirals of time, it builds another ring around itself. Well, so do our lives are like that as well. So what they're saying here is the similar kind of thing, but it comes out as experiences. These are more like rays of the senses. What I really like about this is these two characters here. What I just shown you is this around the edge. Now, what is he doing? His hands are out there saying, my boundaries, my edge, my frameless window, my hands are wide. I worship nature, the whole world, and experience them. When my hands are wide open, I experience the wide openness of it all. So the whole world is within me. My whole birth chart, all the planets going around me are within me. And my arms are wide open to that. So I take it all in. It's a beautiful experience. So next time you go walking into the park or alongside a river or on the beach or up a hill and take a view, do this and experience that. See the sky within you. Then we have cup and ring marks in megalithic culture, particularly in UK and Europe. You've got the megalithic culture. This to me is a geocentric center. They are at their center and they're saying, look at the view. They create these carvings with the direction of viewpoint. I mean, that's a very new theory, but it's what I believe it to be the case. Then you have Newgrange with the Venus, the lucidity of Venus, the brightness of Venus, spiraling of time again and again, because Venus comes back every 7 years and shines in the light box at Newgrange. So again, you have this idea of rings or spirals of time, which leads to the labyrinth, which leads to the Christian labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral, which again this is the pilgrimage. And this is what the pilgrims used to do. I believe pilgrimage is about having the world move through you. Because when you do your circle like this, your orb, your Christian saint stained glass window, they would walk the paths to the cathedrals, taking their pilgrimage, and the world was moving through them. They were doing primum mobile, prime mover, the outermost sphere, which is God, the love of God that moves the spheres. So this edge behind the void is where God exists. That's the void. You've now found the edge of which you are part of the divine creation. It's just there. You're in it. You're in the earthly heavens. It's a wonderful experience, and your chart corresponds to it perfectly. So it's exactly as you are. You're expressing your third person consciousness. Your third person consciousness is your chart. But when you want to get over a heavy transit, if you've got a pretty heavy transit going on, just do a little bit of divine awareness, and life becomes alleviating. Everything is solved. Because when you do this, you just become to the present moment. It's very healing. Okay, so you can just heal yourself instantly because you don't have a past anymore when you go to the present moment. When you're driving along, are you actually moving? When I drive my car, am I actually moving? No, the world is actually moving through me because I'm sat in a seat. And instead, the world moves through me. So when I do my divine sphere around me, it's beautiful for driving, by the way. It's just like enlightenment whilst driving. I mean, why not? I'm driving along and it's super alert, it's super wonderful, and the world moves through me. That's a transit. Why do they call but it's transit? It's movement, transience, movement. So the planets are moving through me time, and I am at my beautiful orb, my center. I can ride a bicycle. If I get on a tube train or a bus, I get on a bus, I get on at a bus stop, I climb on the bus and I sit down in the bus. And have I gone anywhere when I'm sat down on the bus? No, but the next bus stop then arrives in me. Think about that for a minute. It's beautiful. It's hilarious, actually. Because I'm sat on the bus and then the bus stop arrives in me, the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And then I've arrived at the place I would call my destination. I get out and I'm wandering around and everything's moving through me. That's God. That's your divine nature. It's your true nature moving through you. Now, to put more color into the chart, we have things called rulerships. It's what we're drawn towards, our attention, our objects, the things we like and we love, our rulerships, things that really correspond to us. That's another lecture for another time. But I do hope you're enjoying what I've been telling you today. There it is. We have our cellular nature at our center. We're moving out everything between our hands. Is the whole world, the whole universe. It's all there, right between manifesting in between our hands. There it is. And then we get to the Nebra sky disk. Now, this was in the British Museum last year. They had a massive exhibition called Stonehenge. I don't know if anybody went to it, but it was queues of people going to see this. And this was the star of the show, the Nebra sky disk. And what you have here, of course, is the archaeologists have translated as the sun and the moon. There's the sun, there's the moon, there's the Pleiades. These are various stars. Now, what they call this here and this, which is missing here, they call those the handholds. That's the official archaeological reference to the Nebra sky disk. These are called the handholds, this bit and this bit. And this is called the boat. It's like, for a minute, just remember what I've been saying is your handholds. Oh, there's the handholds around the edge. And the lights, the sun and the moon, the lights. The moon rules the left eye and the sun rules the right eye in traditional astrology. Yes, it does. Because we have the 7 entrances, don't we? 2 ears, 2 nostrils, mouth, 2 eyes, 7 planets. Tetrabiblos, right eye, left eye, sun and moon. Handholds, they're the handholds, right at the edge there. What's the boat? Well, when I look down here, if I look down, everything vanishes at a certain point because I can't see my own chin. If I look down, I can't see my chin. Can't see the chin. But I feel like I can see the edge of the thing I'm floating through life on, which is my boat. And in traditional astrology, they have the helmsman. Have you heard of the helmsman? Which is the planet that rules the ascendant in traditional astrology. I'm sure you've heard it because people are talking about it a lot these days. The helmsman guides me through my life. And that's the boat in the Nebra sky disk, because the helmsman is my ascendant. And this space, this circle, this is my ascendant. Because when I was born, my rising sign is everything's rising up into this. It's all rising up because I was born pure awareness, and here it is. But how that's colored for me, how I perceive that shape and form in my third person awareness is my ascendant, but it's also my midheaven, my nadir, and my descendant. The four angles of primary motion create the sphere that I'm in. It's tetrabiblos. It's beautiful when you think about it. So here's the Nebra sky disk. And then we have the Thema Mundi, which of course is the mythical horoscope used in Hellenistic astrology to show the supposed positions of the seven visible planets, including the sun and moon, at the beginning of the universe. Well, in the close eye experiment, I was showing you infinite space. And then I said, 3, 2, 1, open your eyes. That was the beginning of the universe. That's the Big Bang. Because when you have your space, scientists tell us there was a big empty space. Then suddenly everything went poof in an instant. Well, when you close your eyes, there's nothing there. There's big space. When you open your eyes, everything's filled up. Boom, suddenly it's all there. And it's all coming through light. And what you have here is you have your sun and your moon at the beginning of the Thema Mundi, with the ascendant, the rising sign has the two lights, the luminaries, which are the two lights. And then you have the other planets stretching off in their order, the Chaldean order again, around the sides of the Thema Mundi, okay? So the ascendant is the awareness that we're born with, the moment of birth, the beginning of the universe. The moon was the left eye, the sun was the right eye. The other planets, which are the reflected lights, stretch out in order on both sides of the luminaries, okay? I'm having to speed up a bit because I have a feeling you're probably going to tell me the lectures, but I'm just trying to get to the bit that counts, which is really just sealing it up to astrology, so you're understanding what I've been telling you today. William Lilly's, my favorite quote from William Lilly is in the beginning of Christian astrology. He has a letter to a student, and in that letter he says, as thou daily conversest with the heavens, remember the blue sky heavens, the seven heavens, so instruct and form thy mind according to the image of divinity. Now, I've been showing you how to connect to the divine. This is all during the Renaissance. Lilly was Renaissance. Lilly would walk around London his whole life. He lived inside his orb. This is an orb. It's an orb. The orb of influence of astrology. Planets are constantly making aspects. They are in orb. And when someone says, I'm getting a transit and it's in orb, what are they talking about? They're talking about the fact that their orb, that edge, that beautiful, fantastic edge in which consciousness grows and flows, is happening within them. And Lilly tells us how to do it right there. So instruct and form thy mind according to the image of divinity, which means basically harmonize with what's flowing around the corners and around the edges into your space, from God's void, from the God within. Let it flow without, let it flow round and through. Beautiful, right? I mean, it's just a beautiful thing. The Dendera zodiac, what are they doing? Well, there they are, supporting a huge orb. It's a massive great circle in which the whole of the night sky is contained, because we can see all the zodiac signs there. But what are they doing? It's what they're doing that counts. They're all holding up this orb. They're holding up the big circle that they're in. They're inside the space that they are in, and they're holding it. They're supporting it. They're holding it up in ancient Egypt. So you have there, and it's like the four angles. You can see four goddesses holding the four angles, but you also see rather nicely Horus, the falcon-headed god. There's 8 of Horuses holding that up. So Horus is the falcon-headed god. Now, in ancient Egypt, they named things in shamanistic, they named things after what they were experiencing in nature. So when you think about the falcon-headed god Horus, which is where the word horary comes from, and where the word hours in time come from, Horus, horary, hours, is the falcon. Now, what does a falcon do? If you go and see them, how do they fly? A falcon flies in circles. Because, like all animals, it's first-person awareness. They don't have third-person consciousness. If you have dogs and cats, they are all first person awareness. All animals are first person. It's what comes into their sphere. Whatever comes into their orb is influences them instantaneously. They don't have an ego. They don't develop that ego or consciousness. They just have the pure awareness. They just what's life today. Oh, wherever they walk, wherever they wander in the field, or whatever's going on. Falcons are the same. They circle around and in the sky, and when they see something enter into their field of awareness, into their sphere, they'll go and get it. Hunting mode. So that's what they do. Yeah. So that activates their consciousness. Oh, we're going to get that. So they dive down. So there we go. All right. So that's what the Egyptians were doing. They were seeing it in circles, and then they were saying, "Well, I am in circles. I am in a circle too." So you have Horus here with an orb above the head, the orb, and all these kind of movement of time, because as it flies, it's going through time. So here's this, it's kind of like a spheres thing. But what I really like is the fact the Ankh symbol, the Ankh, is a circle with the space, is the with the arms outstretched. Yeah, so the Ankh symbol is similar. But then here is, a little man worshipping a light of a star, and I think that's pretty groovy. So, I mean, I'm not an Egypt academic. I don't have a PhD in Egyptology or anything like that. So go ahead. They're probably going to shoot me down in flames. They're going to love it as well. They're going to say, but I'm going to say my intuition tells me that's the case. What I'm seeing in hieroglyphics is, and what I see in ancient Egypt, knowing that they had this space that they were in. Pure magic, because we still can't work out today how they built the pyramids, etc., etc. The mystery, the great mystery, is that we are in the void. Yeah. Now, how can we work that void to empower ourselves? That is the Pluto and Aquarius. What we need now in the West is to re-establish the space that we are in and really get to grips with it and make it into our power tool, which is why I think astrology is about to get a huge renaissance, and we needed to put the jigsaw pieces together. If you look here, this is in the Louvre, and you've got 3 versions of Horus, I believe. But what's Horus doing? Horus is pointing at its own face like this. Remember the first experiment? What do you think they're doing? Well, they're saying, well, now the official explanation is archaeologists say, oh, they're pointing at their mouths because they're hungry. Well, maybe, but I'd say they're pointing at the space they're looking out of. So, because that's more deity-like, isn't it? And their worship, Horus and things. So, and all these things, the manifestation of their mind. This is the imagination. This is manifestation of mind. So you get different various things, and they're the horns, various things, that would indicate that they're connected at one with nature in a shamanic kind of way. So the pointing at the face, I think that's pretty groovy. Here is again the worship of space that we are in. The zodiac signs going up the side here. These are the zodiac signs. So the zodiac is round the edge of our space, and then there's a boat here with an eye of Horus inside it. So these are 2 boats each side, and then we have this rather supported, sort of like a mirror disc. The eye of Horus here. Thoth, the god of writing and communication, has his hands raised in front of here. So this is Thoth, who's the ibis bird. Now the ibis bird stands in the Nile River with its long beak. And I think that the ancient Egyptians saw the beak, the ibis, dipping into the water with its beak. And what happens is ripples. Yeah. So there would be like, boom, ripples, the bird creating the ripples. So that was their orbs. Yeah. Because the ibis would see something under the water and go and get it. So that's why I think Thoth has the. So I'm just giving you some ideas here. It's the single eye of awareness. These are sort of the different spheres moving away from center. Yeah. So, all different deities. There's the 2 hands in Egyptology, a hieroglyphic of the 2 hands. I'm moving much faster now, very quick, just to get rounded up for you guys. Here we have an Islamic picture, I believe, holding, as you can see, the hands holding up the circle in which the one is looking extremely content and happy inside it, with various diamonds, spirits guiding us through our orbs and the planets. And then you have the 4 elements, I think, around the sides here. And here you have ancient medieval England, the Macrobius diagram. Here they are holding it up. They're supporting the big circle, which is in fact the zodiac. And it's very similar to some of the other things I showed you earlier. So you have there they are, the monks, as it were, holding up the big circle, which is the space that they are in. And in my favorite one, which is this Roman zodiac, and here is this character inside the zodiac. I'm just going to give you a different, but you can see the zodiac signs: Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus. You see them going all the way around. Yeah, let's just rotate that for you. And you can see here's the character inside his orb with all the light beams coming in. He's touching the edge of his zodiac there. He's touching the edge of his void, or his no thing, or his now here. He's got the 4 angles of his chart. There's 4 angles. There's a little star showing the light. I think he's cracking the whip because he's always moving forwards, like on a chariot of his own making. And this is his 4 angles on his, like an orb. So I say that's very astrological. And because to me, he's touching the edge of the zodiac, which is touching the edge of your primary motion to find your secondary motion. Your secondary motion is outside here in that void. Everything manifests through transits. Pretty much second to last slide or so. When you see, in my theory, is when you see mosaics or anything with big eyes. And this goes right back to Sumerian Mesopotamia. When they have big eyes, obviously big eyes, then to me, that's when they're showing that they're being geocentric. They're showing that they're at their center. So sometimes you get imagery in ancient cultures where they show the big space, and they try to indicate that through their artwork. So you can see here the halos with light, and their expanded eyes. Same with Mesopotamian, Sumerian culture, and all the other things. Shiva, we already looked at him with it, and he's in front. He's in front of the orb of the no thing, or the zero, or 0 degrees of each zodiac sign. A new state of awareness. Every time the sun crosses, or planet crosses, makes an ingress into a new sign, we have a new state of awareness growing into consciousness. Me at center, atoms, molecules, cells. There's the human state, which is the sun. And then everything else. The 7 spheres, but moving outwards into the big space of everything. Macrocosm, microcosm. Everything is within my hands, as it were, my consciousness. A very interesting picture from megalithic culture, but I believe that's the void, and this is everything moving out into it. So that's a sort of ancient megalithic kind of indicator. Zen gardens in Japan, we have the still calm center around which everything manifests and moves. Same again with Zen. So I'm encouraging, really, basically, I've shown you the experiments today, to now start doing a bit of meditation, and you will find that beautiful void, or just sit calmly with yourself and watch the breath going in through the nose. Apply the experiments as well, and you can't go wrong. In terms of watching your transits, watching your space around you develop. And then 2 quotes for the end from Shakespeare. This from the Midsummer Night's Dream. Shakespeare describes the poet's eye as glancing from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven, and as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. And the experiments I showed you today are like that, because we glanced from heaven to earth and from earth to heaven. And as our imaginations bodies forth the forms of things, we pointed outside ourselves to look at all these things around us, the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen, our own imagination, turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing, right? The no thing in the space around us, a local habitation and a name. We give objects names, I think, but then we have the space that we are coming from. It's coming from out of us, like the poet. It's coming out of us. And as you know, the globe is, why is the globe called the globe? Because right up until Newton, everyone was inside their globe, inside their orb. So they would go and see. And if you've been to the Globe Theatre, you'll know that this is a painted zodiac. That above the stage is the 12 star signs painted on the grid. And behind the stage, there are the 7 planetary archetypes. Behind the orchestra pit here, there are long hangings. You can't see them because this is covered over, but there are 7 long hangings of the 7 planets behind there. So Shakespeare is all astrological, and he's telling everybody to point, their globe. Yeah, so he had to take them through the globe. And then finally, the prologue to Henry V. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. And there's the muse of fire round the edge that ascends to the brightest heaven of invention, the law of manifestation, the law of attraction, the heavens of invention. A kingdom for a stage, our whole world, your whole world is your kingdom. That's your stage that you act on. Princes to act, that's your planets. And monarchs, that's your kingship, to behold the swelling scene. The swelling scene because it's constantly moving and manifesting within the space around you. So he was hinting at the power of law of attraction and manifestation, which you can do now when you discover your true awareness, and then use your planetary transits and your progressions and all the things in your chart to become more creative. So it's the medieval model. This Shakespeare quote highlights the impact the medieval model had on literature and art. Poets and other artists depicted these things because their minds loved to dwell on them. Think of Chaucer, Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, John Milton. Think of Aristotle, Plato. Think of all the creative people before Newton, and you start to get an idea of what they were manifesting through their own imagination and why it was so beautiful what they said. We have not had this medieval model recognized for 300, 400 years. So it's very imaginable and so satisfying to the imagination. It sits satisfying in our imagination. We sit at our center, and it's very calming and relaxing to sit at your center. So can you, my question to you now is, can you also now attain the highest peaks of creativity and imagination when you apply this medieval model to your life, to your chart, and everything else? And I hope you enjoyed my talk today. Thank you very, very much for attending and listening to my talk. Please do buy my book on Amazon, or if you go to my website, londonastrologer.co.uk, I'll send you a signed copy. So either way, if you buy it on Amazon and leave me a 5-star review, then I shall give you a free astrology reading, 20 minutes on Zoom for free, if you leave a nice 5-star review. So it's a win-win, buy a new book, and the book describes everything I've shown you today. And it's very beautifully produced. This is a very well edited, really well produced book. So it's worth to have it on your bookshelf, and it's beautiful. I'm so proud of what I've done. I've got to tell you that because I think I've really nailed something. So
well, thank you
very much.
Thank you, Julian. It's been very interesting talk. And has anyone got any comments or questions? Jill, do you want to say something? Can you hear me? No. You're on mute.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not. Am I on mute? No, I'm unmuted, aren't I?
Yeah, you're okay. Yes.
You can hear me. Oh, that's good. I'd locked myself out somehow, pressing buttons, trying to change the name from my husband. I knocked myself out of the video, and I couldn't get back in. But yes, I found it very interesting. A very interesting way of looking at life, Julian. Quite different to any ways I've ever looked at life before, and much to ponder, as I've just put in the chat box. So I've got to have a lot to think about there, and all the imagery is quite fascinating. Yes, I want to look further into it.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, I can give you another talk if you like. So, back in a year.
Oh, yes. See how far we've got.
If you're interested.
Right.
Can I ask you, by the way, in the Birmingham Astrology group, is there a lady called J.A. Blundell? Miss J.A. Blundell? Because she lives in Telford, and she bought a copy of my book and I posted her a copy from my book the other day. But she only gave me a postcode, so I put the name and the postcode. But Telford, which is near Birmingham.
I haven't. Telford, it's about, I don't know, it's about 15 miles from me, and I live about 18 miles from Birmingham, so it's a good way. But no one called Blundell has been.
No, okay. All right. Just thought I'd ask because I had to send them a book. So
yeah. Okay.
All right. But
Well, thank you, Julian.
I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah, and I hope I can show
Yeah.
you all at a conference in the future, in not too distant future.
Yes, I do hope so. It'd be very interesting. And I must admit, a walk in the park will be a completely different
Yes.
experience for me from
Yeah.
now on.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Good.
That's amazing.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
Lovely.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be in touch, Julian. Anyway,
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Christine.
Yes,
Yeah.
thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Brilliant.
Thank you,
Thank you
Julian.
very much.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye bye
thank you.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, okay.